Hello, everybody. Thank you, and welcome back to another episode of Future Dreamers. I'm so excited. We have another guest today. We have Lauren Fondriest, who is an intentional dating coach who helps millennial women find love. And so I'm going to let her explain what she does in her own words. But I'm so excited to get into the questions we have today about making decisions out of love, not fear, how to conceive of like dating in the new world, and all the tools there are to help us find love with intentionality, and how we can self-actualize through being in partnership. So a lot of good stuff we're going to dive into. But first, Lauren, thank you so much for joining. Please tell us who you are, how you serve in your own words. And I'm so excited to just like pick your brain on all these topics today.
Thank you so much, Kathryn, for having me on today. I'm thrilled to be here and talk all about love today and how our listeners can incorporate more love into their lives. I have had my own journey finding love and have now found my husband, which has been an incredible journey for me. And I really struggled along the way with that. And my mission now is to help other women through the dating process. Because dating today feels like such a struggle for so many. And I hear women say it feels like a chore. Where do I even meet someone? So I work with women one-on-one to help them date with intention to find their dream partner. So this is all about looking for that committed, loving partner and being really intentional about finding the person who's aligned for you.
I love that. Yeah, dating is such a transformative experience that can sometimes be really fun and sometimes just like really like knock you around in the world. But we learn so much from the process. And so that kind of leads me to my first question is like sometimes the best healers and the best leaders, how they figure out how to lead others towards what they really want in life is because they went through that process and the ups and downs and they found it within themselves to continue on their path. And so, before we jumped on and pressed record, we kind of talked about that is a little bit what happened to you. So I would love it if you just like will open the veil and tell us like what has been your journey to love, like what went wrong, like how did you pick yourself back up, and how did you eventually learn what you needed to know to like call in the love you found, and tell us about your husband, like how you met, and just like let us hear the story.
Yes, thank you. So I was single and dating from the time I was 27, coming out of a significant relationship until I was 33. Coming out of that relationship, I had no idea that I would be single and dating for a period of 6 years before I found my next serious relationship, which was my husband. And through that process, I got in situationship after situationship. I was constantly swiping on dating apps. I would meet up on dates and I would just go with the flow to see if there was a connection. And I realized through this process, after much anxiety, much heartbreak, much uncertainty, that I didn't know what I was doing. And I realized that as women, we aren't taught how to date in today's society. I grew up reading Cosmopolitan magazine, and now we have Instagram Reels and TikToks to tell us how to date. And society gives us such terrible dating advice. And and so
Yes.
most of us never learn how to date in a healthy way and really identify, well, what do we actually want in a relationship and what's important to us in an authentic way, and have the skills to be able to communicate that with someone. So I learned all of this the hard way through so many awful dating experiences. And when I got to that last situationship, it was the worst one of all. It was so challenging. And the universe was throwing me lesson after lesson. They're like, listen, you said you want a committed partner who wants to be with you and only you, and this isn't it. So are you continuing to settle for this, or are you breaking it off so you actually have the space to find a partner who will commit to you? So that was my biggest lesson from the universe, was in order to manifest what I say that I want and what I know I truly want deep down, I have to say no to the things that aren't aligned with that. So I said goodbye to my final situationship, and opened up space for me to meet my husband, who I met very soon afterwards.
Amazing, amazing. Well, tell us how you met. Tell us a little bit about the hubs, because as a millennial as well, like I went through a lot of those journeys, and it was
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying. Like our society gives us just impoverished advice on like how to move through this process, and it's so emotional, and like the vulnerability, and then all the ghosting, and as an elder millennial, like the old guard of millennials, like, and that's one of the questions we'll get into later, is just like the new paradigm of dating versus like people thinking of like the was there ever a golden era of dating? Like I'm gonna say that there was not.
I
But
don't think so.
tell us how you met your husband, and like what it was like to finally. I love that you're saying, like the universe was like showing you how it was going to be if you didn't actually claim what you wanted. Be like, okay, here's another situationship, girl. Does it feel good to stay the same or to continue not getting what you want? And what are you going to do to change it? Claim it by making space and like actually bringing that self accountability in, which I know is something that you're big on.
Yes, exactly. I had to really claim what I wanted and hold space to be open to finding that and say no to anything else that didn't align. So, a part of this process was realizing that it's not helpful to blame it all on the men, right? I hear many women saying, "Oh, it's all the men." But at the end of the day, we can only control ourselves. So I really had to take a hard look at what is my own behavior and contribution to the outcomes that I'm getting, and how do I shift that? So I had this period. It was not very long. It was only 5 weeks after that I ended up meeting
Wow.
my husband. We did meet on Tinder, so I was
Okay, nothing
on
wrong with
dating
that.
apps at the time.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
when I met him on our first date, something felt different in a good way right away. And an example of that is that he was very open about topics that I never would have talked about before on a first date, like mental health, for example. And
Awesome.
we all have our own mental health journeys. And that was something that I never felt comfortable talking about with other dates. And he made it super normal and super comfortable to talk about on our first date. So that was my first indication that this is someone different.
That's amazing. I love that. And that's just I think one of the beauty, as we, live in this world now where social media is part of almost everybody's life, and you can deride it all you want, but it's almost like how do you use the tool, is where you can find the value. So anybody can communicate whatever they want. And I think that people, if through this tool, we can see that everyone is just going through so much. Like everyone's life is totally different, but at the end of the day, we're all having our own human life experiences. And I think one of the common things is like none of us, men, women, men seeking women, women seeking men, women seeking women, men seeking men. We were
Right.
not taught how to date. So we're all, we can blame each other when things don't go right. But at the end of the day, like having compassion for that, we're all kind of just like figuring it out blindly. And people like you who heal through their own process of like not getting what they want until they truly decide and then claim their path are here helping demystify the process for the rest of us who are like, I've had enough of, running into brick walls. And so, my next question is I know you have kind of an ethos of like make decisions out of love and not fear. And I think that's such amazing advice. And, it kind of leads into like, how can you stop fearing your own authenticity? How can you claim your own empowerment? How can you be self accountable through that process? Because, like you mentioned, you had to really take a hard look at like why was I continuing the same patterns, and that's going to lead to the same result. And so, how did that experience of your own kind of getting authentic and raw and accountable with yourself? How does that shape how you guide others to finding love intentionally?
Yes, I feel like the world would be such a better place if people made decisions out of love instead of out of fear. And so think of fear as lack or scarcity. So, for example, if you're single and you're dating and you're constantly telling yourself there are no good quality men left, I'll never
Yeah.
meet anyone. That's an example of what it feels like to date in that sense of scarcity mindset. And you're making decisions from that fear that likely aren't aligned with your true authentic self and your own needs and desires. So the shift here is to really come back into yourself, tune into your own desires, your own needs, and operate from that place of authenticity, living in alignment with your own values and saying yes to the things that feel like a full body, true yes for you instead of people pleasing or accommodating for others. So, this is absolutely something that is a skill that can be learned with practice. And I help my clients tune into themselves to strengthen that sense of self love and empowerment and really reshape their energy. So they're dating from a place of, okay, I meet someone, does he align with what I want? Instead of, oh my gosh, does he like me? It's a very different shift energetically in terms of dating. And then you're much more grounded and more present in the dating process. And you can make decisions based on what feels right for you rather than grasping at something that might not be aligned for you.
I think that's amazing advice. And like, I peeked into your astrology before we got on this call, and you have your sun and your moon in the sixth house, which is which is the house of truly figuring out a sustainable lifestyle, whether it be your work, whether it be love. It's like where you, after you've gone through a lot of experience, before you kind of pop up into the world of relationships above the horizon in your chart, you got to kind of like retool things based on your experiences that you've already had to say, like, I figured out what worked and I figured out what didn't work, and let me clarify things before I get into the world of relationships starting in the seventh house. And you have Leo in the seventh house, which means you are like here to be a lover, here to like be vulnerable, but like experience all of the beauty of like showing yourself through love. And so I think it's amazing that you have your sun and the moon in your sixth house, where that just like really showed you that you needed to learn lessons around clarifying sustainable practice in your daily life. And then you have aspects that point to your 10th house of career. So like you were born to do this work, and it's amazing to see someone who just was like, I'm claiming my purpose. And it's like your seventh house also has half of it in Virgo, which is like the house of the healer, through healing themselves, through figuring things out, through, you know, like after Leo goes out into the world and is like, I'm being myself, I'm doing everything, and like showing people who I am. Sometimes you do need to take a little bit of like inward motion and say, let's actually analyze what's going on here so that I can do things more sustainably. Kind of very sixth house energy too. So it makes sense that you went through this whole process of like learning, like situationship. I've had those too. Good Lord. Sometimes they were fun. Sometimes they just like really suck. And so kudos to you for being on purpose. And so as we kind of talk about like we mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, the modern world of dating, like nobody, I don't think, ever got in any generation great advice for dating. Like thinking back to like my grandparents, my parents, I'm like, everyone's been flying blind like forever.
Right.
But I think there still is a tendency to glorify or like think of the past as a golden age. Like as an older millennial, like we were just going out and getting drunk at bars. Like that was our advice. Terrible. Like the opposite of being authentic, the opposite of being intentional and like knowing what we want and like asking for it. It's almost like we were moving in fear completely, and we had to like pour tequila shots on it so that people could be like, hey, I maybe do like you. Like, can we like figure this out? So it's just like almost like a silly comical like era of comedy. But
Right.
I know in the modern era, there's so much like, oh, dating apps are trash. It's crazy out here. But, you know, everything is a tool. It depends on how you use it. So what would you say to people who are in dating in the modern world right now? How do they use intentionality? How do they use the tools that are out there now to clarify and move on the path of getting what they want?
So, what dating with intention means is that you are clear on what type of relationship you want, how you want to feel in that relationship, and what values your partner has when you find them. So, you know who it is when you find them. It's very different than just casual dating just to to date or just to have fun or just to have flings. It really brings a different energy into it. And it's okay to date casually. But if you are hoping to find a committed partner, that's where this intention comes in. And the biggest piece of that is that self-reflection up front, that self-love and understanding of what do you truly want and need in a relationship, and how do you want to feel in your relationship. So much of what we do is up in our heads in today's society, but really getting into our bodies. How do you want to feel? And a perfect example of this when we think about that long-term sustainment. I think you mentioned that from my birth chart, that long-term sustainment. What society doesn't tell us is that a long-term sustainable relationship, you have to feel safe and secure and grounded being yourself in. We grew up watching Disney movies, right? We watched all the rom-coms. We see all the things. They glorify that initial chemistry, that spark, the chase, the struggle, right? How many running after someone in the airport scenes have we seen? And that's not necessarily what a sustainable love and relationship looks like. And it's common for people to go on a first date and say, oh, I'm not really sure I felt that spark. Well, did you feel safe in their presence? Do you feel like you could be yourself? Do you feel like you gained energy from that experience instead of feeling drained afterwards? It's a very different way of reflecting on your dates and thinking about how someone might become that stable, committed partner for you over the long term. That it's not just about that spark and chemistry that might fizzle out quickly. That's typically what happens in a situationship, but really finding someone that you can build and grow and find that sustainable relationship with over time.
I love that. And that's so sixth house sun and moon for you, is to be safe, to be yourself, because that would be just torturous to be in a long-term relationship with someone who can't hold all that you are. And how can you, like, we all change throughout the course of our lives. And so, one of my next questions is like the true highest purpose of the seventh house in astrology is that we learn so much through evolving in one-on-one relationships. And then we go on to add like group partnership, like business partnerships, community, and all of that. But we have so much to learn and evolve through in one-on-one, deeply committed partnership, whether you're spiritual or not. And there's things we learn through failing, there's things we learn through succeeding. But if you really want to go on a soul growth partnership, finding someone who wants to sign up for that level of transformation is really like something you should identify and then like make clear when you're in the process of looking for your partner. So what advice do you have for women who really want a partner who can hold them through change in their life, and they can both be good mirrors to each other to grow into the highest versions of themselves through a long-term partnership?
Such a good question, Kathryn. I'll answer this in two ways. One of how I handle this with my single clients, and I'll talk about how I put this into practice in my marriage. So with my clients, one of the exercises that I ask them to do is to reflect on their past dating experiences. Think about all the exes, all the situationships, anyone that you dated in the past, and imagine that they're holding up a mirror to you. What are they telling you through that mirror about where you were at that point in your life? Maybe you were not emotionally available, so they were emotionally available, right? Like energy attracts like energy. So think about what was going on in that relationship that gives an indication of where you were in your life at that time. And there's no judgment here, right? This is just part of the reflective process, understanding that we're all growing and evolving and learning lessons over time. But it really helps us get clear on what are those patterns in how we, meaning like a single woman, is showing up in those relationships, and how she can evolve and grow through some of that to show up differently. So that's how I think about that mirror in the dating context.
Love that.
Yes. And then with my husband, Oh my gosh. I mean, I set a vision that I wanted a big, bold, expansive life and a big, bold, expansive love before I met him. And he is someone who continuously helps me, again, hold up that mirror and see what are my opportunities to grow and evolve. And we're doing that not only for each other, but also together in relationship. So we're constantly growing and evolving in our own relationship. And it's so beautiful to see, like, some growth we really have to do on our own, our personal reflection, our personal evolution, but some growth really only happens in relationship when you're getting that feedback from someone else and they're mirroring that situation back to you. So this is such a beautiful example, and I love that astrology even points to that.
Yeah, I mean it's really like it's interesting the if we think about the dial of the houses, like the 1 through 6 is really like figure out your own unique spark. So it's so fascinating how astrology really, like whatever anyone thinks about pop astrology from what they see on the internet, it's really fascinating what astrology has to say about relationships, because if you think about the dial of the houses 1 through 12, 1 through 6 is all about understand your unique spark, understand the environment you grew up in. How are you conceiving of your own unique spark and in that environment? And then truly lock in your own understanding of who you are, what you're here to do from an embodied perspective is at the bottom of your chart, your fourth house. And in your fifth house, you go out and you create. It doesn't mean just only like painting or singing if you're not a natural artist. Sometimes that can be through situationships. Like the fifth house I call the house of the fuck boys or the fuck girls, and it's like sometimes you just want to go out and test out life. It does not mean you're doing that forever though, but it doesn't mean you aren't going to gather like some very interesting information and experiences from those things. And then when you get to the sixth house, you're like, whoa, let me take stock of all of this. Let me make sure that I am bringing my unique spark with me, because I'm about to enter the realm over the horizon, which is the realm where you learn through relationships, interpersonal, one-on-one, group, just being in your collective environment. And so the fact that you have your sixth house, like basically you are meant to say, like Cancer, that like I need to be safe. I need to like have a good shell for myself that's not meant to like be a wall to the outer world. It's meant to protect me so I can fully unfurl my Leo self, that is coming in your seventh house. And so like we talked about earlier in the episode, you're just totally meant to be doing what you're doing. And your own path has helped you like conceive of how to explain that to other people and let people know, like truly like be safe with your like find a partner who loves you enough to like let you like be yourself, because there's so much to learn through the vulnerability of growing with someone else reflecting back to you how that's going. And I hope that that is the new era of relationships, because if we look back to our parents or grandparents, everyone's got a story in the family of like people who came together like through happenstance or like because they just like met in college or what have you. And, like bless them for making it through it. And so I wanted to loop back around to like today's dating. You can read all kinds of articles of like, oh, dating apps can be terrible for your mental health. You met your husband on Tinder though. And it's been a minute since I've been on the apps, and I'm married now, so I'm not on them. But, like I did meet good friends who like we didn't end up developing into more, but I was like, oh, I'm so glad I like met you. And like, like we like stayed friends for, years and years after that. And then there were also ones where I was like, oh my gosh, this is not for me. So what advice would you give to people in terms of the tools they can use in today's world to sort through the noise, but still find, like, because people still want love. Like, love is what makes the universe go round. Like, love is this, like, story of value that ties it all together. So nobody's going to, like, stop looking for this. So in the modern world, with all the tools that are around, what would be your advice for navigating the dating world?
Yeah, such a good question. I think so many people are feeling so frustrated and they feel like they're ready to give up on dating. And of course, if you can find that joy in solitude, amazing. More power to you. But to your point, love is such a rich part of having a full and meaningful life. And there's nothing quite like having that romantic love and having a committed partner to do life with. So if that is something that you truly deeply in your soul want, you know that, and don't give up on that. There is hope around it. And I think the advice that I would give is that you can meet quality people anywhere. Right. So I am actually offering a guide on how to meet quality single men, which I'll give you for the show notes. But,
Yes.
the most ubiquitous thing we think of as dating apps. And I realize the dating app landscape feels very different today than it did even 5 years ago when I was on dating apps. And people are really struggling with burnout on the dating apps because they're not getting the outcome that they're looking for after spending hours swiping mindlessly and not making any real connections, or maybe playing pen pals with someone and never actually getting to a date. So if you're open to finding people in person, right? There's so many avenues to do that. It's really about going out into the world and claiming your authentic energy, pulling your eyes up from your phone, and being aware of your surroundings, who's around you, who catches your eye. How might you create some openness and approachability to have a conversation with that?
Love that advice of like getting out into the real world, because I think, especially as we're emerging, it's been a while since kind of people have been back out into the world after COVID, but I feel like people have this thirst for real human connection, and the internet helps you find like all of these different meetup groups that are going on and just like people with similar interests. And so like that seems like that might be a rich opportunity for people to go and find people who are open to connections. So give us a little bit, if you can, of like tips and tricks on like if you see someone in a public space or in a group, maybe you've gone to like an event space or something, and you don't know if people are single. Like, what are some ways to kind of open a conversation where you're not putting anybody on the spot, but you just, want to kind of like let the universe know that you're open for connection? So how do people navigate that from a conversational standpoint?
Yes, this is something I think people really are struggling with today because we've gone so far into this like stranger danger, don't approach anyone.
Yeah.
And so I think we all need a little bit of courage to learn how to do this in a respectful and approachable and appropriate way. So think about it, if you're in a public setting, you see someone that catches your eye, and maybe they're by themselves or they're just with their friends. Think about, maybe approaching them and not using a pickup line, but just saying something very simple based on the context of the setting that you're in. So something like, "Oh, have you tried this coffee before?" Or, "Oh, have you been to this park before? Have you seen this band before?" Something super simple. And then the key here is to notice their energy in that moment. So are they open to engaging further and making conversation, or do they feel more closed off? And that's okay. You don't need to know why. Right? We all want to know why, but we don't need to know
Sure.
why. If they're closed off, maybe they're already in a relationship, maybe they want to spend time with their friends, whatever, it doesn't matter. And so then you say, "Have a great day," and carry on. Another tip that I heard of a lot of like singles events doing these days is if you're interested in someone, you could offer your contact information, but not necessarily pressure them to give you theirs. So this is a way that it's much less pressure and you're still giving that opening to someone.
Love that. Like maybe a business card that doesn't have your phone number on it, but has your Instagram. So like,
Yes,
it's
yes.
like,
I
here's,
actually created this is embarrassing, but I created personal cards when I was single, and they had my
it's
name
great.
and my email address on them. They were very cute, and I handed out a few of them, when I was single. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's you like you said, the reason you met your husband is because you made space, you told the universe what you wanted, and you crafted the opening in your life and participated in it actively. Yeah, I
Exactly.
love that. So say you do meet someone in a public setting, whether it's a networking event or you just see someone who happens to be charismatic out and about, and the opening line that you use works. It's not some crazy cheesy like movie pickup line, and you do find yourself on a first date, and you've been through situationship after situationship, you're ready to put a stop to those patterns. How do you, without being awkward, without being putting too much pressure on the other person, just say like, hey, look, dude, like whatever you're looking for in life, like I'm not trying to take you off your path, but like I have identified a clear path for myself, and it involves like sustainable, safe, long-term, like monogamous love. And no hate on like polyamory if that's your thing. I am not an expert on that. I don't know anything about it. But so how do you kind of navigate that just transparency with someone that doesn't have to like ruin the date if they're like, oh no, that's not what I want. But like it's better to just fail fast or like get that clarity so that you can know what you're getting into. So how would you kind of give advice around that conversation?
Absolutely. I think in that first or second date, you can start by asking them some questions around, what are you looking for through dating process? Or, what are you hoping that your life looks like a year from now? Right? Keeping questions, maybe they don't always have to be super direct, but give people an opening to start talking about what are they looking for, and then take that opening for yourself too, to share a little bit about what you're hoping for in life, in relationship. And to your point about failing fast, this is actually really important, because what I experienced through situationships is that I would never have that conversation. And I was looking for a committed relationship, but because I never clarified that, meaning I never expressed that I wanted that, nor did I ask them if they wanted that, I would get super emotionally invested. And then, weeks later, they're saying, oh, I'm not looking for anything serious. And I was devastated. I could have saved myself so much heartbreak if I had clarified that by date 1 or 2. And I think having that decision-making process to say, maybe this person was great, but they're not for me because they don't align with the type of relationship that I want to be in, it will save you so much heartbreak down the road. So I think that faster decision-making process is really helpful, especially if you're a millennial dating and you don't want to waste more time getting involved with
Yeah.
someone who's not serious.
I think that's great. And again, from the love, not fear perspective, and part of your ethos is like, there's nothing to be afraid of, like when you get a no, that's actually like a redirect, And so, like I think that's fantastic advice, and really comes from a place of like self-love, and understanding that like you're giving yourself permission to like you're feeling safe in yourself also, to say like I can handle no's, like they're not the end of the world, and it's better to just say I deserve clarification, like and that's a good test of maturity too, to say like how does someone handle mature conversations, because you definitely want to know that up front.
Right, right. I
Yeah.
think what you said about operating from that place of self-love and self-worth, knowing that what you want out of a relationship is not too much. It's what you want. You should have that. And being clear about that need, that desire, and saying no to anything that doesn't align with that. I know it feels so challenging in the moment, but that's what will truly allow you to open up to find exactly what you're looking for.
I love that. And since I know you focus on millennial women, and that's me too. I'm an 82 baby, so maybe like I'm at the the older end of the spectrum. But there are plenty of women who are looking for love at every age. And I know like the older you get, like gosh, I think it's so crazy that society like places this like age game on people. But I remember like in my late 20s and early 30s, like there were dear friends of mine who were, in so much fear because they thought that like if you hadn't met someone by your early 30s, like shit was really like getting dire. I had a bit more adventurous, like I wasn't like so time based, and I kind of like took the slower road to things. But what would you say to women who are either in that fear framework of they've kind of like taken in what society says, which I think is crazy and bullshit, and like you could drop all of that fear patterning, or women who may be coming out of a longer term relationship and they're in their early 40s or something like that, and just to like get them into a place of like it really isn't like over, like you can find love at any age. And so any advice around that for people who maybe needing to drop some fear patterning around timing and age.
Exactly. You're so right. You can find love at any age. And if you're stuck in that fear, come back to yourself. Fill your own cup up with that self-love and really strengthening your sense of like living your best life. And that energy, people can feel that. And that's what attracts people to you. So coming at it from that angle of really creating the life that you want to live. And part of that is creating the feelings that you want to feel in a relationship. So if you want to feel that emotional attention and attunement, create that within yourself, create that with your friends, create that with your family. So you're resonating in that energy, which means you're more likely to attract someone who's also resonating in that energy. So think about all the things that you might want to feel in your relationship and create those. Find that energy in your own life now, because that's what will ultimately attract someone who resonates at that same.
I think that's great advice. And yeah, gosh, thank you for all of this. I've learned so much from you, and it's just been fun to like reflect back on like my own path. And it sounds like we
Yeah.
both took, like a very intriguing and lesson learning journey to finding love. And so is there anything else you want to like leave our listeners with, or any other tips, tricks, or just final thoughts you've got?
Yeah, I'll add another thought around that question that you just asked about age and worrying. Is it too late? It is worth hanging on for the right person. You don't want to settle for anything less than a fully aligned partner that feels so good like in your body, because you're going to end up unhappy and you're not going to be able to be fully yourself or live your full life the way that you want it to. It is worth holding out for it. I got married when I was 36 years old, and I was so glad that I held out to find the right partner, because if I had spent longer with any of the other guys I dated, I would not be in a very good place. But because I held out to find the right partner for me, I am now building the life that I want to live, and I feel so happy and fulfilled and energized being in this marriage. We just celebrated our second wedding anniversary, and it's been an incredible process being married. And so I share that as hope and inspiration and evidence that it is possible.
I love that. I got married at 40, so like,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, and I didn't feel any type of negative way about that. And I remember years ago, because I'm sure we've all counseled our many girlfriends throughout the years of like, this is happening or that is happening. And I remember seeing, often in the magazines, like you're not finding great advice, but I remember seeing
Right.
one piece of advice that was like, if you're single, you know what the beauty of that is? You are open. It's much worse to be at like the tail end of like a terrible relationship that you're going to have to do so much cleanup work, to make that space in your life. So if you are in a place where you are alone, you also have space and openness, and you can really like do that work of coming into yourself, filling your own
Mhm.
cup up, as you mentioned. And that again, it is all about creating like the magnetism that will pull the right partner to you after you decide with intentionality what that is. So I think that's
Yeah,
amazing advice, and congratulations on your second wedding anniversary. That's just
thank you.
amazing, and just such a testament. I'm sure your clients really, are like, yeah, she's telling us how it is, because she climbed that mountain, and now she can see from the top and like let the ladder down for the rest of us who are on the path. So thank you for being on purpose and on mission and doing what you do. But before we wrap up, can you tell us a little bit about the programs you've got going? And we'll drop how to find you. Tell us your IG and just any socials that you're on so that people can find you. And we'll also put everything in the show notes.
Perfect. So, for any single women who are looking for support around all of the things that we talked about today, I offer one-on-one coaching. I have a 10-session dating coaching program that goes through all of these components around building your self-love, strengthening that magnetic energy, getting super clear on what you want in a partnership and how you want to feel in that relationship, and then creating an action plan to go out there and find him. This is what I help women do through one-on-one dating coaching. And you can find me on my website, laurenfondriest.com, as well as on Instagram at Lauren Fondriest.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story of your vulnerability and showing us how when you decide what you want and really fill yourself up first, like you can magnetize a beautiful partnership that sets you up for a life of learning together. And that is deep soul growth. So congrats and thank you so much for joining us and for your time, Lauren.
Thank you, Kathryn. This has been so much fun.
Awesome. Thanks for joining everybody.